Walk into any hardware store today and you will find an axe for $15. Buy it, use it for 2 years, and watch it slowly surrender to rust. Orange spots appear first, then spread like a disease until the metal crumbles into powder. Now imagine traveling back 800 years to examine an iron axe forged in ancient China. The blade shows a dark patina, but the metal underneath remains solid and strong. No deep pitting, no structural decay. 8 centuries later, and this primitive tool still outperforms your modern steel. How is this possible? How can something created with basic furnaces and hand tools outlast precision-engineered modern steel by hundreds of years? The answer lies not in magic, but in forgotten chemistry and a lost understanding of iron that Chinese smiths mastered through necessity. Before we explore this ancient wisdom, let me know in the comments if you believe we have lost something valuable in our rush toward cheap disposable tools. Does the idea that our ancestors built better tools resonate with you? Drop that comment now, because your engagement helps this forgotten knowledge reach people who need to understand what we sacrificed for convenience. To understand why Chinese iron resisted rust so effectively, we must first examine what modern steel actually represents. When you purchase a tool today, you receive what metallurgists classify as mild steel, containing approximately 0.25% carbon with 0 slag and 0 phosphorus. We celebrate this as advancement. Ancient Chinese wrought iron told a completely different story. It contained only 0.05% carbon, but included up to 2% slag, those glassy impurities remaining after smelting. It also contained phosphorus, sometimes reaching 0.25%, an element occurring naturally in the ore. Modern steel production deliberately eliminates both slag and phosphorus. The reasoning seems logical because these elements complicate factory processes. Slag-free steel rolls into sheets faster. Phosphorus-free steel welds more easily on assembly lines. We optimized manufacturing speed while ignoring durability. But recent discoveries reveal those impurities were not defects but protective features. When modern steel rusts, corrosion penetrates straight down like a drill. Moisture contacts the surface, oxygen reacts with iron, and rust forms. This rust remains porous, trapping additional moisture that generates more rust. The corrosion follows grain boundaries in the metal like roots exploiting cracks in concrete. Microscopic flaws become highways for destruction. Within months, surface rust transforms into structural damage. Chinese wrought iron possessed a secret weapon called slag stringers. During forging, as smiths hammered iron blooms, tiny threads of glassy slag stretched throughout the metal matrix. Under microscopic examination, this resembles wood grain, with thousands of glass fibers running through the iron structure. When rust attacked Chinese iron, it encountered these slag barriers. The glass fibers deflected corrosion, forcing it to spread sideways rather than penetrating deeply. The result was an axe head that developed protective patina and stopped corroding instead of disintegrating into orange powder. If this information proves valuable, hit that like button. It costs nothing, but helps this knowledge reach people who need to understand what we abandoned for convenience. Chinese smiths did not understand chemistry in modern terms, but they recognized which rocks produce superior iron. In marshland regions across China, iron ore formed naturally in boggy deposits. This bog iron ore was easily gathered, practically raked from the ground, but contained something special: high phosphorus content. When bog iron underwent smelting, phosphorus remained in the metal. As this phosphorus-rich iron slowly corroded over decades, something remarkable occurred. The phosphorus helped create a dense, stable film of protective oxides on the surface. This film sealed the metal from moisture and oxygen, dramatically slowing additional rust formation. This represented a fortunate accident, a beneficial impurity in the ore. Chinese smiths did not understand the chemistry, but recognized that bog iron performed better. They simply knew it worked. The most spectacular demonstration of this effect stands as the Iron Pillar of Delhi in India, over 1,600 years old, weighing more than 6 tons, with almost no rust visible. For decades, scientists remained puzzled about how iron could survive so long. Modern metallurgical analysis revealed the answer. The pillar was forged from iron containing high phosphorus content. As it slowly oxidized over centuries, a thin layer of crystalline iron hydrogen phosphate hydrate formed at the metal oxide interface. This layer is incredibly stable and non-porous, functioning like ceramic coating. Moisture cannot penetrate it. The pillar essentially stopped rusting after forming this protective skin. Chinese smiths created the same effect on smaller scales. Every time they forged tools from phosphorus-rich bog iron, they unknowingly applied this protective principle. Meanwhile, modern steel production mines deep underground for pure iron ore, then deliberately removes phosphorus during refining. We traded rust resistance for easier manufacturing. But phosphorus advantages were not unique to Chinese bogs. Across the ancient world, certain regions became legendary for their iron quality, not because of superior skill alone, but because the earth itself was different there. In Toledo, Spain, medieval smiths produced blades so renowned that knights traveled across Europe to acquire them. The secret lay in the ore. Iron deposits around Toledo naturally contain traces of nickel and chromium, elements we deliberately add to modern stainless steel. These were geological accidents. Toledo steel resisted corrosion better than iron from other regions because the mountain itself was alloyed. In southern India, smiths produced wootz steel, what Europeans called Damascus steel. Modern analysis reveals something extraordinary in these ancient blades. They contain carbon nanotubes, structures so advanced that material scientists did not discover them until the 1990s. Medieval smiths did not know they were creating nanotechnology. The slow cooling of their crucible process, combined with trace elements in the ore, accidentally assembled these molecular structures. Ancient Chinese trade routes carried blooms of high-quality iron across vast distances. A smith in Beijing might pay a month's wages for Swedish iron known for purity and workability. Arabian merchants transported Indian wootz cakes to Damascus, where they were forged into legendary weapons. The principle remained universal. Beneficial impurities from local geology combined with processes that preserved rather than removed them created materials with properties we struggle to replicate today. We are not superior to ancient smiths. We simply chose to optimize different goals. The technology that created this superior iron was brutally simple. The bloomery furnace was a clay and stone chimney standing only as tall as a person. Inside, layers of charcoal and iron ore were stacked together, while bellows forced air through pipes at the base. The key was temperature control, or rather the deliberate lack of precise control. A bloomery operated at roughly 1200 degrees Celsius, hot enough to chemically reduce the ore, but crucially, not hot enough to melt the iron. Iron melts at 1538 degrees Celsius. The bloomery never reached that threshold. What happened instead was a slow, messy process. As charcoal burned, it produced carbon monoxide gas that pulled oxygen away from iron ore, leaving behind particles of pure metallic iron. But all the rocky impurities in the ore, the silica, and other minerals, those did melt. They formed glassy slag that dripped down through the furnace. Solid iron particles sank into this molten slag bath, clumping together at the bottom into a spongy mass called a bloom. After hours of work, the smith would crack open the furnace and extract this incandescent blob that looked more like volcanic rock than metal. Here is where transformation occurred. As iron particles formed, surrounded by burning charcoal for hours, they absorbed carbon unevenly. Some areas absorbed very little, remaining as soft wrought iron. Other areas absorbed more, accidentally becoming steel. Throughout this mixture were threads of protective slag. Modern steel undergoes cold rolling. Steel bars are pressed through rollers at room temperature, shaping them quickly and efficiently. Ancient Chinese smiths lacked that option. They had to work their iron hot. The bloom was reheated in the forge and hammered repeatedly. This hot working accomplished something crucial. It expelled some slag while compressing and aligning the slag that remained, stretching it into microscopic fiber networks. Every hammer blow welded iron particles together more tightly. Every reheating allowed carbon to redistribute. The constant working eliminated internal stresses and microcracks. The smith was not merely shaping metal, but fundamentally improving its internal structure with every strike. This required time. A single axe head might demand 3 days of repeated heating and hammering. A modern factory stamps out the same shape in 3 minutes. We chose speed while they achieved permanence. To understand why Chinese iron resisted rust so effectively, we must recognize what that iron represented. It was not simply material, but concentrated time, skill, and value. Those 3 days to forge a single axe head represented 3 days of master craftsman labor. In ancient China, a quality axe might cost the equivalent of a laborer's wages for an entire month. A sword could represent 6 months of income. These were not purchases, but investments meant to last lifetimes and pass to descendants. This created an economic reality we have completely lost. When your grandfather's hammer cost as much as a month's food for your family, you did not discard it because of surface rust. You maintained it. You oiled it. You stored it properly. Tools that expensive were listed in wills, fought over in inheritance disputes, and marked with owners' symbols. Chinese blacksmiths trained for 7 years as apprentices before calling themselves journeymen. Another 7 years might pass before earning master status and permission to open independent forges. This was not romantic tradition, but economic necessity. A poorly made tool that failed could kill someone. A plow that broke during planting season could mean starvation. The guild system enforced quality through brutal simplicity. If your work failed, you were expelled from the guild. No guild membership meant no legal right to sell your work. The guild's reputation exceeded any individual smith's value. Quality was not optional. We examine ancient Chinese iron's rust resistance and assume it resulted from superior technique. But technique means nothing without economic pressure to maintain standards. They made iron that lasted because making iron that failed was financial suicide. Today, a hardware store axe costs $15. If it rusts out in 2 years, you purchase another one. The manufacturer faces no punishment. No guild exists to expel them. Economic incentives have inverted completely. Planned obsolescence is not conspiracy, but simply more profitable than permanence. Chinese smiths understood something else we have forgotten. Fresh iron needs treatment. After forging a tool to final shape, the smith would perform a process we might call seasoning, though they used different terminology. The finished piece was heated until it glowed dull red, then rubbed with linseed oil or animal fat while still hot. The heat caused oil to polymerize, forming a hard, thin coating bonded to the metal surface. This coating was not paint, but a molecular layer that sealed iron from moisture and oxygen. You season cast iron cookware the same way today. But modern steel tools arrive with nothing. Maybe a thin coat of machine oil that washes away the first time it rains. No one teaches tool seasoning because modern steel is designed as disposable. Chinese iron that was used regularly developed another advantage. A dark, stable patina formed on the surface. This was not destructive rust, but magnetite, a form of iron oxide that is dense and protective. Frequent use maintained this patina intact. Oil from human hands, friction of work, regular exposure to air without prolonged moisture all maintained a protective surface layer. Tools that were stored dry and used often could last generations. The grandson would inherit his grandfather's hammer with iron still sound. We abandon these practices not because they did not work, but because they required care. Modern tools are designed for replacement, not maintenance. You might wonder, if Chinese iron was so superior in rust resistance, why do we not manufacture it that way now? The answer is economics, not ignorance. A bloomery furnace produces perhaps 50 pounds of iron per day. A modern blast furnace produces thousands of tons. The difference extends beyond scale to control. In blast furnaces, temperatures exceed 1500 degrees Celsius. Iron melts completely. Slag is skimmed off as liquid waste. The result is molten pig iron with high carbon content that must be refined into steel through separate processes. Fast, efficient, and consistent. But consistency comes at a cost. You cannot control microscopic distribution of slag stringers in liquid metal. You cannot accidentally preserve beneficial phosphorus while removing harmful sulfur. The bloomery process was slow, precisely because it operated at the edge of iron's transformation in that narrow temperature range where solid-state chemistry could work its magic. We traded that magic for the ability to manufacture 1 billion fence posts per year. Most will rust away within a decade, but they are cheap. The bloomery gave Chinese smiths a chaotic mixture of materials in every bloom. Soft wrought iron, harder steel, protective slag. A lesser craftsman might see this as problematic. A master saw opportunity. The smith could read the metal. By striking a piece against a grinding wheel and observing the sparks, he could identify carbon content. Soft iron throws long, lazy orange sparks. High carbon steel erupts in brilliant white bursts. Using this sensory knowledge, the smith would sort the bloom. High carbon pieces were precious and would form cutting edges. Softer wrought iron, tough and shock absorbent, would form the body and spine of blades. These pieces were forge welded together, heated to white-hot temperature until their surfaces began to liquefy. A few hammer blows and they fused permanently into one. The result was a blade with a hard edge that held sharpness, supported by a flexible core that absorbed impacts without shattering. This composite structure, hard edge and tough body, was not a single material trying to accomplish two things, but two materials each, performing what it did best. Some smiths took this further, creating pattern-welded blades where bars of iron and steel were twisted together before forging. The results showed water-like patterns on the surface, beautiful and functional. But what matters for rust resistance is that those forged welds created more interfaces, more boundaries where slag stringers could form protective networks. A pattern welded blade was not just strong, but armored against corrosion from inside out. If you read ancient Chinese blacksmithing texts, you will find recipes that sound like witchcraft. Medieval manuscripts prescribed strange concoctions for quenching heated steel. One recipe called for white radish, horseradish, earthworm extract, and deer blood when the animal was in rut. Another recommended clarified honey, fresh goat urine, alum, borax, olive oil, and salt mixed together as the perfect quenching liquid. For centuries, historians dismissed these as superstition, folklore from people who did not understand chemistry. Then modern metallurgists decided to test them. The results were surprising. Most exotic quenchants did not work. Blood, despite legendary status in sword-making lore, cooled steel far too slowly to harden it properly. Milk was equally useless. The romantic image of a blade quenched in enemy blood was pure fantasy. But two liquids worked remarkably well: water and urine. Why urine? The answer is practical chemistry hiding behind mystical language. Urine contains urea, which breaks down into ammonia and carbon dioxide. More importantly, it contains salt, sodium chloride, potassium, and other mineral salts. When you plunge red-hot steel into pure water, something problematic happens. A steam layer forms instantly around the metal. This steam envelope acts as insulation, slowing the cooling rate. If steel cools too slowly, it will not harden properly. Salt solves this problem. Particulates in salted water or urine disrupt the steam layer before it can fully form. The liquid maintains direct contact with hot metal. Cooling happens faster, hardening succeeds. Chinese smiths discovered this through trial and error. They did not know about steam envelopes or nucleate boiling. They simply knew that quenching in urine or brine produced harder tools than pure water. So they wrapped practical knowledge in mystical language. The elaborate recipes with honey, herbs, and animal parts added organic compounds and minerals that further disrupted steam formation. The smiths were conducting material science experiments, one quench at a time, recording what worked without understanding why. After hardening steel in a quench, Chinese smiths performed another critical step: tempering. They would gently reheat the blade and watch colors spread across the polished surface. Pale straw yellow, deep bronze, peacock blue, purple. These colors were not decoration, but an exquisitely precise temperature gauge caused by oxide layer thickness forming on the steel surface. Each color corresponded to a specific temperature, and each temperature produced different material properties. Straw yellow around 230 degrees Celsius made steel perfect for cutting edges. Bronze around 255 degrees was ideal for springs and swords needing flexibility. Blue around 300 degrees created tools that could absorb impacts without shattering. The smith would heat the blade until the desired color appeared, then immediately quench it again to lock in that exact microstructure. He was manipulating crystalline transformations in steel using nothing but eyes and experience. We still use color tempering today, but ancient Chinese smiths developed this technique not through understanding, but through patient observation. They noticed that a blade heated to bronze color survived battle better than one heated to blue color, so they codified that knowledge in guild secrets and master-apprentice relationships. The mystical language protected valuable trade secrets, but behind every invocation of the four elements or proper moon phases was real, tested, repeatable science. We just needed 3 more centuries of chemistry to understand what they already knew how to do. Ancient Chinese iron was not perfect. It was not pure. It was not consistent. By every modern metallurgical standard, it was inferior material. Yet a knife forged in the year 1300 can still cut. An axe from 1150 can still split wood, not despite their imperfections, but because of them. The slag that modern refineries discard as waste was microscopic armor. The phosphorus that modern processes remove as contamination was a rust inhibitor. The slow, labor-intensive bloomery process created internal structure that liquid metal blast furnaces cannot replicate. We did not lose this knowledge through some catastrophe. We abandoned it deliberately. We chose quantity over longevity, convenience over quality, cheap over lasting. The genius of ancient Chinese blacksmiths was not in overcoming imperfection, but in understanding that imperfection, when properly controlled, could be strength. Those smiths standing before their clay furnaces knew something profound. They knew how to read iron's soul. They knew which rocks to gather from marshlands. They knew that patient, repeated heating and hammering created something no factory can mass produce. They built tools meant to outlive their builders. We build tools meant to be replaced. That is not progress. That is a choice. Every rusted fence post, every corroded garden tool, every hardware store axe that lasts 2 seasons reminds us what we chose. If this opened your eyes to how much we have lost in the name of cheap manufacturing, make sure you subscribe. We are uncovering more forgotten technology that puts modern solutions to shame. Hit that like button if you want to see us tackle more topics like this. What other ancient technology deserves closer examination? Share your suggestions in the comments. Remember, every time you purchase a tool, you vote with your money. Buy once, cry once, or buy cheap, buy twice, and fill landfills with rust.